Okay, we are in Luke chapter 16. We will be having the Lord's Supper here as well. We'll give you instructions when we get there about how we do it in this COVID time period. So, but you'll notice it's here in front of us. Luke 16. We're going to talk about money. I knew my accounting degree would come in handy. My wife still doubts that. And she is the accounting degree person in our family, and mine was just, I don't know, by God's grace. But why is he talking about money? Becomes the issue because chapter 16 is all about money or wealth for his disciples to understand some teaching, and we want to get into that because he's preparing them for life after his time on earth, after his ascension, and they have to be prepared for all kinds of different things. You know, people who get wealthy too easy have a tendency to squander or waste it. That's one of the problems, isn't it? They could be those who inherited wealth. They say that a large percentage of those who inherit wealth by the third generation have already lost it all. By the third generation. It's amazing. I see every day because I'm such a sports person and I look at the sports page, I see those who have gained millions way too fast as athletes. And they squander it way too fast. There's articles of all these athletes who won millions of dollars, some of them $40 million, and they have nothing to their name right now. And it came fast and it went fast. They did not know how to manage their money, or the people around them for that matter. There was a movie that came out in about 2006, 2007. Some of you might have seen, especially on Hallmark or other places, called The Ultimate Gift. It starred James Garner as the grandfather who died, if you remember. And he was leaving all his millions of dollars as a Texas rancher and oil guy to his grandson. But his grandson thought he was going to get rich fast with his grandfather's death. But his grandfather had set up a way for his grandson to get the money. It was through 12 tests, or 12 what he called gifts, or learning 12 different values that would allow him to appreciate. Because the bottom line is, most of the people that squander it don't appreciate the value of money. They don't appreciate the value of work. And that's what, in the movie The Ultimate Gift, I was trying to get across to this young man, is that, hey, until you appreciate what some of these values of friendship and giving and helping and a number of different family and different things, you're not going to be able to handle the wealth that you're going to receive once I give you all that I have as an inheritance. No, the story ends well. The guy does learn his lesson, but it points out that there's a need to learn to appreciate the value of some things to be able to invest well. And Jesus is basically teaching his disciples here in chapter 16 how to use this world's wealth prudently, wisely, and not squander it. But what does that mean? Does that mean, who's the financial guru right now, the financial university? Before that was Burkett, and then there's been others with the Christian groups. Ron Blue was another one. Dave Ramsey. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about how we can wisely handle our money for our benefit. That's what he's going to talk about. It's how to use our money for greater things than our own benefit. And we get into the story because we have the parable in verse 1 through 8. And then we basically have some basic principles that Jesus wants to teach his disciples based on that story. And so the story, let's read verses 1 through 8 of chapter 16. And so he said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. And so he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be a steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have to resolve what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to them, how much do you owe your master? And he said to them, 100 measures of oil. And he said to them, take your bill and sit down and quickly write 50. And he said to another, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust servant because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. I don't know about you, but this parable has bothered me for many years. It's like, what in the world is this trying to say? Is that saying we can be dishonest and get ahead? Is that what it is, right? Is that what it's really saying? No. What's it centered around? The word that we have right off the bat in verse 1, it says, to him that man was wasting his goods. The word wasting there is the same word that was used in the parable of the lost son back in chapter 15. Book of verse 13 of chapter 15. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possession with prodigal living. And prodigal living was just reckless, carefree living that didn't know the value of the possessions or money. And so there's the tie-in. Now Jesus is turning to his disciples and teaching them, how do you avoid wasting money or wasting your resources or wasting wealth like this prodigal son did? Now we can go even back further in chapter 14, because remember, in the cost of discipleship, one of the third aspect of discipleship, he comes down and says, verse 33, likewise, whoever does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. So if you forsake all you have, right, to be a disciple of Christ, a committed disciple, that means that you're getting rid of it. But is that what Jesus wants you to do, is really just sell it all off? We see in chapter 15, those who are disciples that are not salty, that have lost the flavor of the salt. And how do you get it back? You get it back through repentance, in order to get back into fellowship with Christ through repentance. And so Jesus turns to the disciples now and says, well, how can you now not squander or waste the goods that you have? Now, remember this, the disciples have pretty much left all. They don't have a whole lot. They couldn't even pay their taxes. Jesus had to, remember for Peter, he had to get a fish out of the lake, and inside of it have a coin to pay his taxes. So he didn't have a whole lot. Why is he worried about them, wasting what they got? Becomes an issue. Well, the story, obviously, is the steward who was lazy, and squandered or wasted the goods of his master, and was not bill collecting. I don't know about you, but when I worked for my dad in high school, he was auto parts guy up in northwestern Minnesota, and I'd deliver stuff out on Saturdays for him, get in the van and drive all over the country. And before I'd go, he'd say, this person owes us money. Can you ask him to pay off his accounts payable? Oh, no. I hated that. Why should I, as a 17-year-old, have to go out to, some trucker and some farmer body shop guy and say, hey, my dad says he owes him money. You better pay up. What am I, the heavy hit here or what? I did not like that. Accounts payable. But that's what he didn't want to do either. And so he got fired. And he only had so much time to continue to work before he was going to be laid off and no longer a steward, not be on his own. And he was wise enough to recognize that, number one, he couldn't work. He says, I cannot dig. There's no way I'm going to go back to manual labor. Some of us might feel that way. If you've been in an office job and then have to get out and have to go back to doing manual labor job, not quite as easy. Fortunately, I've always liked manual labor. So for me, it wasn't ever a problem to go back to doing manual labor jobs. But this guy obviously said, no way. And he says, I'm not going to go out there and sit down and beg from people. I'm not going to beg. So what am I going to do? He's in a dilemma. How is he going to survive after losing his job when he doesn't want to put the work in, no value of work, and he doesn't want to beg, which I can understand why. One of the hardest things as being a faith-based missionary is that you had to, as it were, raise your own support. And I remember one person asking me, says, do you like begging from people so you can go on the missions? No, I don't. And my policy was, even as a missionary, I don't ask anybody for some financial support. And I maintain that all the way through, that I will not ask anybody for financial support as a missionary, because it was God's responsibility to raise that support up, that I would present what God had laid on my heart to want to do and ask for prayer. And if people were interested in to support that endeavor, then more power to it. Thank you, Lord. But I once got a tape from a friend of mine that was a close friend way back in the day, and he was also in a ministry to raise support. He sent me a cassette tape. You know how long ago that was? All right. He sent me a cassette tape, and he said, here's a method that you can use in getting people to give more money to you in your mission endeavor. And I was going, no, I didn't even listen to it. Because I remember the day that in my first year out of college, I got involved with Here's Life America, which was a campaign for Campus Crusade for Christ that was in the community. And they had the campaign was to put I Found It stickers, bumper stickers, billboards, ads, the whole bit, and have a phone call in. And I was the coordinator for Fargo-Moorhead area. Long story, I ended up being the coordinator for it. And so I had to go out and get the funds, because it was going to cost about $40,000 to run this. I said, and I quit my job as a brick tender with no salary, and Sue was still in college. And I was going, how's this going to work? And Campus Crusade told me to go to this one business owner, Sturgis Tractors. You ever heard of Sturgis Tractors? They're one of the big tractors made in Fargo, North Dakota. At the time, the guy that was there, his son or son-in-law was part of Campus Crusade. He said, go over there, you'll get a check. So I went over there and I got a check, and it was $1,000. I was like, $1,000 check? It was like, I'm just 1 year out of college and involved in ministry. It was like, wow. So I got a phone call. I said, how much did you get? And I said, $1,000. And the guy goes, that's not enough. Go back. I said, I don't like begging. You don't have to beg. I'll make the phone call. So I went back and I got a check for $4,000. I don't like that kind of thing. I understand the guy's dilemma here. If he wasn't willing to work hard and he wasn't willing to beg, what am I going to do? And so he looked at his circumstances and he determined that the best thing he could do was to reduce the payment of those who owed his master and make friends that way. Now, we have a barter system, right, where you can pay off. I remember the first vehicle I ever really got to drive with a stick shift was a little Volkswagen Bug, a red Volkswagen Bug. My dad brought it home one day, and I'm in high school. I've never driven a stick shift. And so, well, I guess I did with his van. I learned how to do it. But I said, why'd you get that? He said, well, the guy couldn't pay me in money, so he paid me with this car. I said, oh, good. Can I take it out for a spin? So I got to drive this bug around for a while, anyhow, before he pawned it off another way. But yeah, there's barter system. You can barter system. And so he's bartering with these people to reduce the price in order for them to get out of their debt. And in doing that, he is gaining a friendship from them for down the road some favors. And the lesson is, you could say, the moral of the story in verse 8 of the parable is, so the master commended the unjust servant because he had dealt shrewdly. So the principle you have in your notes, one who performs shrewdly by sacrificing in the present will secure for himself a better future. The minute I read that, I think of Fram oil filters. Remember the old Fram oil filters? The guy's there with a motor, and he says, pay me now or pay me later. Either buy the $10 filter or buy a new motor later. Whichever one you want, right? That's the first thing that came to my mind, obviously. But this is, he performs shrewdly or wisely, prudently by sacrificing in the present. The question becomes, what is he sacrificing? Is he sacrificing his portion of the debt as a steward, or is he sacrificing the owner's portion of the debt as a steward? You see what I'm saying? Because as a steward, he would have a portion. In fact, in Jesus' day, some of them would charge up to 100% of the debt for themselves as plus taxes as a portion that they would receive. I personally think, like Tom Constable brings out in his notes, that I like the second aspect, that he's not sacrificing his owner's portion of the debt. He's sacrificing his own portion of the debt. That's why the owner responds, I think, the way he does. If the owner would have been losing money because this guy was being not only a scoundrel with his unwise dealings, but also illegal in what he was doing, there would have been consequences legally against him, I would assume. But the owner is the one that's commending him. And so I believe that Tom Constable, he says it this way: the manager could well have received a commission for each of the transactions that he has negotiated for his employer and deducted these commissions from the debtor's costs. Even 100% commission was not unknown in Jesus' culture. Probably the commission was part of the original bill. So I think personally, it makes more sense to me in the story that he's not being shrewd in the sense of losing money for his master. He's missing out in the present what his cut would be. So he's sacrificing what his would be now for the hope that in the future, after he's without a job, that these people that he's endeared himself to would help him. I think that's what makes better sense to me of this parable than the other way of thinking that he was doing it illegally. But the second principle that's there in verse 8 is the second part. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. The sons of this world obviously are unbelievers. The sons of light are believers. So how is it that the unbelievers are more shrewd in this world than the sons of light? And I think that's the second principle, is that disciples, because he's teaching disciples, should wisely prepare for the coming kingdom by putting this world's wealth to good use. See, what he's saying is that the world today, they look at their future and go, well, I got to put some stuff away. I got to prepare for my future here on earth. And he's saying they at least are wise enough to think about preparing for their future on earth. How many believers are wise enough to prepare for their future in the kingdom? Or do we just live as if everything's okay here on earth and we don't have to think about the kingdom? He's saying, that's why he says they're more shrewd or prudent in the world thinking about their future than sometimes believers are thinking about their future in the kingdom. Oh, I'm going to be in. Isn't that good enough? And he's saying, no, you want to be rich in the kingdom, not just in the kingdom. So he has some basic principles of how that's possible for his disciples. Verses 9 through 13. The first one, verse 9. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous manna, that when you fail, they may receive you into everlasting home. You go, what is that? Unrighteous manna is money that is used by the world to do unrighteous deeds, basically, because money's not the problem. It's the use of money that's the problem. Or as Paul says in Timothy, the love of money, but it's used for all kinds of things that are not godly. And so he's using that term right now to say, hey, the money that this world uses, and uses it for so many bad things, unrighteous things, that we, talking about the disciples, because he says to his disciples, you make friends for yourselves with this money or wealth, that when you fail, what do you mean when they fail? They're going to fall by the wayside? They're going to turn their back on Jesus? No, the idea is when you die. It's a term that is more easily undertaken, is that when you pass away, when you fail, when you die, they may receive you into an everlasting home. That's not the way they get into the everlasting home. It's a way that they'd be received in the everlasting home, the kingdom or heaven. And so I put it this way in your notes: generously spend this world's wealth for ministry, both to evangelize unbelievers and disciple believers, to be able to rejoice with these other believers in the kingdom age. See, what he's saying is that if you're using your money and helping people spiritually, first to come to Christ and then to grow in Christ, when you finally die and go there, there's going to be a lot of rejoicing of people that may be already there or going to end up being there, but receiving you and saying, hey, thank you so much, and rejoicing with what Christ has done, not only through that person, but in those other people's lives. Said, why wouldn't you want that? We get a little glimpse of that here on earth, don't we? I mean, about 2 months ago, Sue and I did a Zoom with a couple that was our best friends at seminary. Okay, that was back in 78 to 83, 82. Okay? So that's been 40 years ago. And we haven't seen them that often over those 40 years. I would say 10 times, maybe, over those 40 years. We got on Zoom and we talked for 2 hours. And it was like nothing. It was just like we've been together for all those 40 years. They've been in faithful ministry, and we have, and they built it in our life. We built it in their life. And so over the time, in the interaction we had, we were rejoicing. Can you imagine what that's going to be like when we finally get together with all the believers in heaven, having been involved in their lives through either evangelism or through discipleship, and the rejoicing that will take place? Hey, you're home! That's so good to see you! Because we have spent the wealth of this world to use it to build into other people's lives. But that's only the first thing. Well, just hold on a second, because I wanted to remind us that it's very similar to Matthew chapter 6. I don't usually stray from the passage, but Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, the Sermon on the Mount. Do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And so the same concept here about living in a way here on earth that is not just filling our bank account for our own sake, but living in a way that there's a heavenly account, a bank account, that we are building treasure up there. When we get there, then there's greater rejoicing. 1 Corinthians 3. Dwayne talked about that this morning in Sunday school. I didn't want to say anything much in Sunday school because I knew it was coming here. But this whole passage in 1 Corinthians 3 is about building the church. And Paul and Apollos are the ones who are building the church. And one plants and one waters. Verse 8. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, and you are God's building. According to the grace of God which was given to me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another builds on it. But let each one take heed how he builds on it. For no other foundation can anyone lay other than which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and straw, each one's work will become clear, for the day will declare it, because it is revealed by fire, and the fire will test each one's work of what sort it is. If anyone's work which he has built on it endures, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved as yet through fire. This is not talking about the good work that's rewardable and the bad work of sin that's unrewardable. This is talking about that work that's being done to build the church up, because both Paul and Apollos are building the church up. That work that's being done by the church that God deems as good work, and God deems the other as work that isn't all that important to the building up of the church, but we are busy doing it anyhow. See the difference? See, I think sometimes we get the idea that the bad here has to be the sin issues. No, he's not talking about sin issues. These are materials that are being used to build the church that are faulty materials. They're not stuff that, okay? For instance, youth groups that go to Six Flags. Great activity. How much eternal reward or value is there to go into Six Flags? Probably not a lot. It's an activity. You see what I'm saying? There's stuff that is helping to build the church in laying the foundation upon Jesus Christ. And there's other stuff that we do that isn't really the same quality or value to God's work. Sometimes it's motive. Sometimes it's the actual. But that's why he's saying investing in that which will reap reward takes some thought, some planning. Let's go back to Luke. Luke 16. So verses 10 through 12. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous man, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have been faithful in what is another man's, have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? This is talking about the fact that we are stewards of resources that aren't ours. So the second point is faithfully superintend, manage, administer your personal wealth as a steward of God's resources, because all that we have, whatever it may be, or how little, how much, is still all God's. And how we use it will greatly indicate what kind of character we are to be rewarded. In the first case, in verse 10, in your notes you'll see the disciple who is responsible with God's resources in this life will demonstrate a trustworthy character to be rewarded by God with greater riches in the coming kingdom. If I can't handle what God's given me here on this earth, no matter how little it may be, why should He give me more in the kingdom to handle? See, I'm in proving ground right here of what I'm capable of handling in the kingdom in a faithful way. Alberto Valdez in the GES commentary says this: the disciples' stewardship of relatively insignificant financial resources serves as an indicator of their potential for weightier spiritual responsibilities in the kingdom. And so he's saying, why wouldn't we want to be planning those kind of things for our lives and managing what God has given us? Second of all, as we move into verse 11, if a disciple squanders God's resources in this life on that which is unimportant to God, then he or she cannot be dependent on to manage God's riches in His kingdom. It goes to the negative aspect. And Valdez says this: disciples who do not faithfully handle the unrighteous manna cannot manage the far more significant spiritual resources and responsibilities that the Lord could potentially entrust to them. See, we are in proving ground on earth on how we handle what God has given us, so that when we get to heaven or the kingdom, that we are rewarded for our faithfulness to handle those things for God's glory. In fact, there's two subpoints here that I think are important, is that God is the ultimate owner of all our resources. We cannot buy into the thing that this is all mine. No, God has allowed us to have all what we have, whatever it may be. And as such, we have a responsibility to use it in a way that would bring Him honor and glory. Yes, there's needs that we have, and He would want us to take care of those needs. In fact, He builds that into the system. But it's not just about for us only. And then God will be the one to evaluate each disciple's stewardship to determine their future rewards. And that's why that question that ends in verse 12, if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, that's God's resources, who will give you what is your own? The riches to come are far greater than the riches of this earth. So he's saying, as a disciple, how are you handling what you have now? Because that's a marker of what you're going to be given in the future in my kingdom, of what you're going to receive as a reward. It's an indicator. Verse 13. No servant can serve two masters. For either you will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Pretty straightforward. Loyalty. Loyally serve God and not this world's wealth. Divided loyalties don't work. So a disciple cannot divide his or her love, because a loyalty has to do with loving something. You can't divide your love between two totally consuming masters, God and money. Because the aspect of money is what? The love of money is what corrupts. And so God wants our undivided love. We're to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind. Everything of our being, inner being, is to love the Lord and not have room to divide its loyalty to something else. Money, wealth, materialism, whatever else you want to consider. So I think, secondly, A disciple should devote all his or her resources to God's disposal with the kingdom and eternity in mind. This is yours, God, to do as you please. I close with a statement from Tony Evans in his commentary. And it's kind of like, whoa! I didn't necessarily see it this way. Either your money will serve God, or you will ask God to serve your money. Let that sink in. Either your money will serve God, or you will ask God to serve your money, because He takes second place to it. That's why Jesus is talking about money and wealth. Because we only see it as something of this world. But He sees it as the proving ground, as the test for the age to come, the kingdom and beyond, of how we will be rewarded in the way that we handle what He's given us right now. So that we don't squander or waste the resources God's given us. Because it's not just about making it in this life. It's about preparing for the life we have in the kingdom and beyond. To be able to rejoice. To be able to receive from God the Father all that He has in store for us as a faithful son and daughter. And the joy of serving Him right now. Let's pray. Father, we come before You thanking You for all that You've given us. And You've given us much. We don't have to compare ourselves to those here in this country. We can compare ourselves to those around the world, and we realize that You've given much. And to whom much is given, much is required. May we be forward thinkers, not just users. May we be those who invest the resources You've given us now, not just for this world, but the kingdom come and eternity beyond. Thank You, Father, for Your patience, for Your forgiveness. Thank You for Your diligence to always challenge us. For it's in Your Son's name we pray, Father. Amen.